So, I think a lot about the afterlife or ideas on the afterlife. I am, at this time, a spiritual person in my life, but I kind of, as far as like any set beliefs, I don't really have like set beliefs. I'm more of an omnist, where I just think whatever someone believes, if it feels good in their heart, and they're not trying to like force it onto other people, and they're not hurting themselves or others, and it makes them feel happy. I think that's what they're meant to believe, and I think like every faith, every religion has some level of truth to it, has some level of knowledge to be gained, and usefulness. And I believe in, like, I guess a spirit or God that is the universe, and I also believe in a shadow of the universe as well. And I think everything has a bit of light and everything has a bit of dark, everything has a bit of spirit and everything has a bit of shadow, and nothing can be wholly one or the other. That even like the shadow of the universe has light within it, and even the spirit of the universe has dark within it, that nothing can exist wholly without the other, that they are contingent on each other, sort of. Like, that would be some of my beliefs, but other than that, I would say, like, other more specifically, I do consider myself a bit of a Satanist, because my idea of the devil is humanity's shadow, and humanity's shadow would be, or devil would be, whatever humanity fears most in the world. Would be, and whatever you fear on a personal level more than anything would be your personal shadow, your personal demons. And people have the wrong idea, because they think by rejecting their fears, by rejecting the devil, that will defeat it. That you have to fight it, and you have to kill your own shadow to overcome fear. But actually, by rejecting fear and pretending like it's not there, you actually hand it control and feed it and make fears worse and make yourself hyper aware of your fears a lot of the time. And I've had to do a lot of work on myself, facing my shadow, facing my fears, because of my CPTSD and autism and different things. And what I have found is, when you face your fears, truly face them, they stop being scary. Because when you overcome a fear and survive, and don't beat yourself up about it, and don't blame yourself for it, or don't mock yourself for it, but you face whatever it is, the fears that scares you most in the world, and then survive, fear loses any control or power. That fear goes from something destructive to a source of power for you, and a source of learning. So fear is not always a bad thing. Fear can be a teacher. And so that's why the devil, who I see as humanity's fear, collective fear, but also like the personification of that, like the anthropomorphized version of that, is actually, to me, an inspiring thing, because I've lived with so much fear and anguish in my life, where it's like, I've already lived in hell, as far as I'm concerned. There is nothing that could be done to me in hell that would be more painful than the first 20 years of my life already were. And I mean that. So I feel like I already was in hell while living. But now that, instead of fear controlling me, I'm controlling my fear, and I have like a dialogue going with my own shadow self, um, which I think it's sort of like as above, so below. So if you are really working and like have uh, made some level of peace and progress with your own shadow, to me that also means that you've made some level of peace with the shadow higher up. So I guess, like, if you've made peace with your own demons, in a way you've made peace with the demon of all humanity. Which sounds impossible, because how can you make peace with fear? How can you make peace with something that people see as inherently evil? But the thing is, fear is a natural, ingrained in our DNA emotion. to have. It is a necessary emotion that actually protects us. And when I began to see my fear as a protector rather than an antagonist, rather than someone who is ruining my life, because there's the destructive fear and then there's the constructive fear. But the thing is, you can slowly transfer your own destructive fear into more of the constructive fear. And the constructive fear of humanity would be one of my gods. So that's why I sometimes say I'm a Satanist. Um, because to me, Satan and the devil is just whatever you fear more than anything. So by conquering your fears, you are taming your own demons and taming, by extension, the devil and like befriending whatever it is that's holding you back and drawing power from that. Second god, which that would actually be, as far as like deities, not really my favorite, but probably like my second favorite deity. My first favorite that I would say is the one that I have the most regard for personally would be death, the concept of death personified. For me specifically, I worship the angel Azrael sometimes, which I believe that name means the help of God, if translated to English. So the two beings I hold the highest regard for would be Azrael, which would be the help of God. He's a personification of death. And then the other one would be Samael, which is sort of synonymous with the devil in Judeo-Christian um, ancient texts and different things, where because like the name Lucifer actually comes from like a whole ass different faith. Like it comes from like a pagan faith, but the name Samael is like a old is actually like an old Judeo-Christian name where it was in like Jewish texts and things. So that's the name I prefer. But Samael is also a form of death, but it's also kind of a form of the devil as well, because it's mixing death and fear, sort of. And Samael means the venom of God, the poison of God. So the things I hold the most regard for in my own life would be the venom of God, sort of the fury of God, and the help of God, which are two forms, two different personifications, ideas of death, but all different ideas of death exist within the same whole of death, which exists within the whole of the universe, which I see everything in the universe ever created. If you combine it into one thing, all the angels are like different. Like I think if you combine all the angels, all the different concepts, that's what God is. But God is also in all of their art. So, anyways, so Samael and Azrael, these angels are like my gods, I would say, because some people don't like the idea of like worshiping angels instead of God, but like the thing is, I used to be an atheist before I met an angel, so it's all equally as valid. However, someone chooses to practice whatever faith they hold, it's all equally as valid to me, as long as they aren't expecting other people to follow their belief, I would say. Um, but like so Samael and Azrael to me are death personified, are my favorite forms of death, and death would be my highest form of God because death is like life is contingent on death for its survival, and I was someone where death used to be one of my biggest fears ever. So by facing my own demons, that required me at a certain point to face my fear of death. And then when I met death, he was like this really kind of awesome guy who, like, well, to me he appeared as a male, but really all of these concepts can be any gender because gender is a made up thing. They usually just, it seems like, pick whichever one they think you'll be more comfortable viewing them as. But anyways, I guess my point is that I worship death, and whatever you worship, that's fine. I don't care. But I also feel like, personally, I believe that whatever you, like, I kind of just love the idea of the underworld as well. Like, I'm noticing I really like the idea of, like, different underworlds and things. Like, I never want to return to the kind of hell I was living in while on Earth for the first 20 years of my life while I was living as a lie. Um, but the idea of an underworld to me is not scary anymore. It's actually really comforting because a land of infinite fear and darkness means infinite, to me, is infinite opportunities to learn and overcome fear, infinite opportunities to grow stronger and like find out more about yourself. And to me, it's not a scary thing because I don't see hell as like a place where you're just like scared all the time being tormented. I see hell, well, I call it Sheol, although actually I kind of believe everyone goes to Sheol. If there are other afterlives, I think all of everything is interconnected. But anyway, I want to go to Sheol. Like I actually do. Like I want to go to the underworlds. Like I don't want to like just go there. I want to like see what's out there when I'm dead and like explore infinitely in the astral planes. But I mean, I would probably settle down there because it's sound like to me fear isn't my enemy because there's two sides of fears. There's the destructive side and there's the constructive side. But whichever lands are ruled by Azrael, that's where I would want to live because Azrael's my favorite form of death personified, and death is my god. But I also feel like to know death is to love life, to understand and stop being afraid of death, to no longer have what is often people's biggest fears ruling you. I feel like is to finally be able to loosen yourself and love life more wholly. So what I mean by that is like death used to be a constant fear for me, where I felt haunted by death. I felt tormented by death because I was that afraid of it. It was one of my OCD related fears. It fed into everything. It was like I just constantly felt watched and scared, and like I was gonna die or someone I loved was gonna die. I was never able to process any grief until like fairly recently when I started being more emotionally honest with myself over the last couple of years. But I don't really feel like I was a conscious, awake being until my early 20s, like maybe 21 is when that really started, because before then I was not only living life as a lie, but it was like I was born as a ghost, someone invisible, someone dismissible, someone a waste to be thrown away and disregarded and dismissed and used. That's who I was when I was my dead name. Which, you know what? I'll just say it. My dead name was Joy, but they were agony. They were misery. They were not joy at all. And after being reborn with help of death, while still alive, as my new self, Max, I am more joyful than I ever even knew was possible. I have more love, more light, more life in my life than I knew could exist. And I have facing my fears and facing death to thank for that. And that's why death is my god.